Hello, coming to you from one of the destination cities of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Outlaw Bryce Journey. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we played that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 17. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring CV out of the dust, and a contributor will dust off Glory to Rome and Jamaica. On the reaction segment, I'll discuss the insanity of the new Monster Crunch game. On the What I Have Been Playing segment, I'll review Western Legends. On the Obscure Bryce Game segment, I'll review First Train to Nuremberg. And on the news segment, we take a look at Mall of Horror.
Oh gosh, I'm reflecting up on the hair of flexing.
I had a chance to bring CV out of the dust recently. I last played it 1 year, 8 months, and 14 days ago when my friend Chad taught me it. I liked the theme a lot and thought the Yahtzee-esque mechanics worked well enough to add it to my wish list. I suspected this would make a good family game addition to the collection. But I only recently had a chance to add it to my own collection when I picked up a copy from a local seller for a good deal. I showed it to my wife and father-in-law right away. My wife liked it a lot. It probably doesn't hurt that she's dominated me in both of our games so far. She's done a lot better at making sets than I have. She also digs the art style a lot. She likes creepy art like that. This is shaping up to be a nice casual game to play in the evening for us. Now that it's in the collection and staying in the collection, I'd be surprised if it got dusty again anytime soon. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Matthew Lamontagne, username Samsagace418, brought a couple of fun games out of the dust this month. First was Glory to Rome, which he last played 1 year, 4 months, and 21 days ago, and currently rates an 8 out of 10. He writes, "For my Out of the Dust games this month, I would like to thank my brother-in-law, who brought these games with him during his visit to my place. Glory to Rome is, for me, the best example to not give up on a game after the first play. I hated my first 3 games, but I read so much greatness about it that I came back for a 4th time over a year ago, and it all clicked. This time, the game was great, tense, just a blast, a really good card game." He also brought Jamaica out of the dust, which he last played 1 year, 4 months, and 16 days ago, and currently rates a 7.5 out of 10. He writes, "My first play of Jamaica a year ago was with 3 players. One of us was not engaged at all and was texting all the time. The other 2 of us, my brother-in-law and I, have fond memories of the first game. This time we were 6, an absolute blast, but you have to take the game for what it is and nothing more. So much fun." Thanks for the contribution, Matthew. I finally gave in and parted with my black box edition of Glory to Rome last year. I like its reiterations, Matanai and Uchronia, a little bit better, though I will totally buy another copy if it ever, however unlikely, comes back into print. But the black box edition wound up funding several of my Kickstarters last year, including my entire Gloomhaven pledge. As for Jamaica, that's when I learned for the first time not too long ago, and is now on my wish list. Reaction segment time. This week I'm going to react to the weird, newly released Target-exclusive Monster Crunch, a game from Creative G Games based on the popular monster-themed breakfast cereals Frankenberry, Boo Berry, Count Chocula, Fruit Brute, and Fruity Yummy Mummy. You didn't know about those last 2 guys, did you? Apparently those were shortly lived vintage werewolf and mummy characters that haven't made the modern cuts. I was not aware of their existence either until a couple of months ago, when they came up as the answer to a pub trivia question. You might not have heard about this game yet either. I think it's caught a lot of people by surprise by coming out of nowhere with not a lot of marketing or press release before suddenly appearing on Target shelves. Anyway, I don't know what to make of this game. On the one hand, I love unusual themes for games, and what's more unusual than a breakfast cereal theme for a board game? I'm the guy who was peddling the awesomeness of the Pez card game just last week after all. And I do love cereal. I like layering multiple different kinds. What's really good is a layer of honeycomb, and then a layer of life, and then a layer of corn checks, and a layer of Rice Krispies on top. but I've never been a fan of these particular serials, so the attempted nostalgia grab of the theme misses the mark for me. I'm kind of interested in the trick-taking shedding mechanics of the game, though. That's a mechanic I'm always on the lookout for new takes on. I'm not going to rush out and buy this game for myself, but if someone else has it and asks me to play, I think I'm game. This company, Creative G, is really going all out on the nostalgia effort. Besides the already successful Bob Ross game and this new Monster Crunch game, they also have a Brady Bunch and a Home Alone game coming out soon. And you know what? I'd be down for trying out both of those too. It makes me wonder, what other nostalgic IPs would my listeners like to see? As for myself, I would totally play a game based on the vintage Mask cartoon. I love that show. 25 years later, I'm still disappointed that I can't actually drive a Jeep boat. On the What I Have Been Playing segment this week, I'm going to tell you about Western Legends, the recently fulfilled Kickstarter game from Colossal Games. That's Colossal with a K for some reason, by the way. I'm a big fan of Western themes, but it's not a theme that is well represented in board games, and the quality examples of it in board gaming is even more rare. There's great Western Trail, but not much else after that, and many of the decent Western-themed games out there are pretty abstract. So the highly thematic Western Legends definitely caught my attention when it launched earlier in the year. But I actually hemmed and hawed over backing it until the last day, because I wasn't sold on the sandbox game description. That sort of game either works or it doesn't. When I hear the word sandbox, I can't help but associate the term with a game that doesn't necessarily have a point to it, or a game that is just a collection of cobbled together ideas that don't really work together. But the Kickstarter was well timed with my tax return, and the theme ultimately won me over. I received the game in the mail just a couple of weeks ago, which really impressed and surprised me. I go into Kickstarters expecting any project to take at least a year to be fulfilled. Anything quicker than that is a pleasant surprise. And Western Legends was no small project, and from a new company. There are a lot of different types of components and parts to this game. I thought for sure their estimated delivery was an overly optimistic pipe dream. But here it is just 7 months later. Very well done indeed. Anyway, I was able to punch, sort, organize, and get through the rules fairly quickly, and had a chance to try it out for the first time over the weekend in a 4-player game. I played as Belle Starr, going up against Calamity Jane, Jesse James, and Joaquin Murrieta. Based on the advice of those online who had already played it, I mixed in all of the expansion and exclusive material right away, since those elements just added additional options in this game, and introduced very few additional mechanics in the process. That was a good decision, because the expansion and exclusive material was very easy to incorporate right from the get-go. As for the game itself, it was super fun! All the different tools in the sandbox work well together. The game is thematic, incredibly replayable, and I expect it to feel different each time I play with a different character, because of their unique abilities and goals, which is something I appreciate in a game like this. There are a lot of great decisions to make during the game, and they all feel worthwhile and meaningful. There are tons of interesting options to pursue. I also like that the player-on-player combats that take place every now and then feel more strategic than purely take that. Our final scores were all within 6 points of each other, so the game seems well balanced as well. I had a great time with it and am quite relieved this has turned out so positively after my recent Founders of Gloomhaven disappointment. I'm looking forward to playing this again soon and have scheduled a session of it at NukeCon, Omaha's upcoming local convention. Obscure Bryce Games segment time. This week I'm going to tell you about First Train to Nuremberg, an obscure Martin Wallace train game from Z-Man Games. As well as known as Martin Wallace is for his train games, it's surprising that any of them could become obscure, but this one has. Originally released in 2010 as Last Train to Wensleydale, it's currently ranked 1,409th on BGG. It was popular enough once upon a time to warrant a second edition and reiteration with the new Nuremberg map. But no one logged a play of it at all last month. That's how obscure it's become recently. I've had the game on my unplayed shelf for several years now, actually, but finally had a chance to get it played at a recent demo I did at Spielbound, Omaha's local board game cafe. One particularly interesting thing about this game is that it takes place on a much smaller scale than most other train games. Most train games have players play as massive companies operating track on a countrywide level. But First Train to Nuremberg takes place at the county level, and players are small-time operators building track to sell to third-party major companies and renting second-hand trains to move the mail and hops cubes and passenger meeples around. Players accomplish this by manipulating their influence through auctions on 4 tracks, keeping track of government influence, manufacturing influence, and influence in the 2 national companies. Government influence enables a player to effectively deal with randomly placed white meeples, who prevent a player from building track and delivering goods and passengers through the regions where they are present. Manufacturing influence enables a player to use desirable trains each turn to deliver the goods and passengers, and the company influence enables a player to connect to company-owned stations and sell built track to them, which keeps a player solvent. Maintaining a delicate balance between player-owned and company-owned track is key to success in the game because it determines if players operate in debt or profitably, which translates into points at the end of the game. Points are also awarded for delivering passengers to matching stations, and for delivering the mail and hops cubes, both of which require the right kind of trains to do so. The first time I read through the instructions, I was left with some questions about how all these elements fit together, but after watching Rado's effective video on BGG, it all came together for me and I was able to put the finishing touches on learning and teaching the game. My demo went really well, and I finished just a few points ahead in an intense 3-player game. There is one connection in the game that grants points for completing it, and making that connection was the difference in this session. One thing I really like about the game is how it feels like a Martin Wallace train game. There are certain designers that have managed to develop distinctive styles, so that when you play one of their games you go, yes, that feels like a so-and-so game. Martin Wallace is one of those guys. The way that goods and passengers are delivered in First Train to Nuremberg bears a resemblance to the way goods are delivered in his Steam family of games. It was fun to recognize that little trait of his in a game outside his most successful ones. I'm going to take a little break from the Where's the Game Now segment because Halloween is coming up next month, and I thought it would be fun to highlight my top 5 games for Halloween over the next several weeks. My wife and I have a tradition of focusing on horror-themed games in the month of October, and we've developed a slate of go-to games over the years that we turn to leading up to Halloween. Number 5 on my list is Mall of Horror, an early Asmodee game from 2005, designed by Nicholas Normandin and later re-implemented as the less charming, in my opinion, City of Horror. These are the only games by Normandin except for, interestingly and randomly, the Marcy Case expansion of Time Stories. Mall of Horror is the only competitive game on my top 5 games for Halloween list. All the rest are cooperative ones, which seems to be a genre that is well suited for horror-themed games. In Mall of Horror, players move their team of survivors around various stores in the mall as zombies try to eat them. Each member of the team has a certain point value assigned to them, and when only a certain number of characters are left alive, whichever player has the highest total value alive is the winner. The blonde is the most valuable character, but the most difficult to keep alive because she attracts extra zombies to her location each turn. The bad boy is the middle value character and has extra defense to stave off zombie attacks. The brute is the least valuable character, but counts double when votes happen, which is the most important part of the game. You see, when a certain number of zombies congregate at a location, then a vote happens amongst the players with characters at that location to see which player has to feed a character to the zombies. It's an amusing mechanic, but is a brilliant way to advance the end of the game. It also creates a delightful psychological guessing game element in the action, which is what I really love about the game. Only rarely are the results of the votes actually obvious. Usually